I keep 3 manila folders in the bottom drawer of my desk. They have no case numbers, no prosecutor stamps, no official chain of custody tags. Ask the department records clerk and she'll tell you, politely, that nothing by those names ever crossed her desk. If you push, she'll pull the drawer closed and look at you the way people look at power lines that sizzle in the rain. Careful, and a little sorry. Officially, these investigations never happened. Unofficially, I can't stop thinking about them. I used to call them urban legends with paperwork. Then the paperwork started to stain. Strange times printed on witness receipts, inventory lists with items our stores don't carry, security footage where the lens shows a person, but the timestamp counts in the wrong direction. I told myself the patterns were coincidence. I told myself I was tired. Then I started to see the same blue sign in places where no planning board had ever approved construction. A giant, perfectly lit Walmart sitting on a dirt lot that was an empty field that morning. A store blinking on at the edge of a forest road like a ship's hull breaking the surface of a lake. A set of front doors breathing warm air in January where the county map says there's nothing but drainage culverts. People go inside, some come back, some don't. I won't lie. There are points in these accounts where I sound like a man who's lost his grip on what's reasonable. Maybe I have, but I remember the voices. I remember their hands, how they trembled or didn't. I remember the smell of floor wax clinging to their clothes long after they had left the store. I'll tell you what I can prove, what I can't, and what I believe anyway. These are the 3 files I still wake up to at night. I'll speak in my own voice, the way the memory plays. Every witness is real. Their names are altered only where it keeps them safe. The store is not real, or it is too real and not ours. You decide. Witness: Walt Hansen, 47, long-haul driver. Location of report: County Substation, interview room. B. Date: late November, year withheld. Walt smelled like diesel and cinnamon gum. He came in about an hour after dawn, knuckles cracked from cold steering wheels, jaw working the same stick of gum he'd been nursing all night. His eyes had that glassy look drivers get after consecutive shifts, hyper-alert and almost liquid with exhaustion. He was embarrassed to be scared. That's the type that tells you the truth. He said he saw the glow first. Headlights bend on empty highway. He's done the road enough to know which dots of light are ranch houses and which are trucks cresting hills. This was different, broad and steady, a rectangle of daylight pinned to the night. As he came over the rise, he saw it plain as the cup in his hand. A Walmart sitting fat and bright on the left shoulder. The front lot neatly painted, cart returns placed just so. No construction cones, no raw dirt, no power lines reaching in, just there. He laughed when he told me he pulled in because he wanted coffee and a pack of menthols and to stretch his knees under safe fluorescence. If you're a driver, big box stores are shelters. You step inside and forget the miles. He parked under a lamp and walked toward the doors. The sliding glass side open before he reached the mat, like the store was breathing him in. He stepped into that bland, clean brightness we all know, the smell of floor wax and warm plastic, the distant chime of a code on the intercom. The greeter said, "Welcome in," without looking at him. He made a show of heading to the soda coolers by the front, grabbed a black coffee from the convenience case, tore it open, inhaled. He moved through the aisles like a man taking inventory of his own sanity. Paper goods, automotive, pet food, health, and beauty. The layout was about right. The details were not. Every clock on the walls, near the pharmacy, above the seasonal aisle tucked by sporting goods, showed a different time. Not minutes off. Years. He couldn't say why he knew that, only that the second hands crawled at slightly different speeds, and some of the minute hands clicked backward once every 7 ticks, like the store didn't agree on the rules of passing time. He went to cigarettes at the register. The cashier smiled too hard, a smile with teeth but no eyes. "Do you have ID?" she asked, and he snorted. Because he's 47 and graying. Because her name tag said Maya A, but the letters flickered like someone kept changing their mind. He passed an old cracked license over. She didn't look down to read it. She kept smiling at the air 1 inch above his head and handed the license back without touching it. He reached the sliding doors and the store exhaled warm air across his face, the way they all do, trying to keep winter out. He stepped forward and the doors didn't open into a parking lot. They opened into housewares. Then he tried the doors by pharmacy, and they opened into toys, ahao. The doors at garden led to seasonal. Even though the garland was still up in seasonal, where he'd just been, and someone had turned snowmen backward on the end cap so their faces kissed the pegboard. He told me he doesn't run, he ran. He ran from door to door while his breath turned to steam in the too warm air and the coffee went cold in his fist. He made 2 circuits and started recognizing the same customers, turning their heads to follow him. The same woman with the red cart drifting like a balloon toward whatever aisle he chose. Her hair never moved. The cartwheels never squeaked. He found the stockroom doors by hardware, the kind with the push plates and the sign that says "Associates Only," like a prayer. He hit it with his shoulder. Metal gave. Cold rushed in. He stumbled into the loading dock and found himself staring at a concrete platform with an open dock door framing. Nothing. Not a truck bay, not asphalt, just a dark and a smell like wet pennies. There were yellow lines painted on the floor that ran right off the edge into the dark as if someone expected the dark to be paved any minute. He jumped anyway, landed ankle-deep in frost-stiff weeds. When he turned around, the dock door framed night sky. No store, no lights, no hum. He limped toward where he'd parked. The lamppost was there. The paint lines were not. His truck was gone. He was alone on a shoulder of 85 South with a cold coffee and a pack of cigarettes that weren't the brand he bought. The logo was off by 1 letter. He walked to the next exit. The clerk at the gas station called us and said he had a tired driver babbling about a store that wasn't there. I checked those station cameras myself. I scrubbed through the hours. I saw Walt step out of the dark with his cold coffee and his pack of Marlboros. Wrong font, wrong name, and I watched our amber highway sit empty where his truck should have been. The clerk told me there was no Walmart there. Not now, not ever. I believed him. I still took photos of the weeds flattened by something long and heavy pulling away. Later that morning, the trucking company found Walt's rig 3 miles down the shoulder with the flashers on and no keys in the ignition. The cabin smelled like floor wax and the faint, sour sweetness of old milk. On the dash was a receipt from Walmart number 000. Purchase, coffee, $1. Date, 0000, time, : The barcode scanned to error. I cataloged the receipt, sealed it, and every time I opened the evidence locker, I expected to say something new. Witness: Raymond Ray Cross, 29, seasonal overnight stalker, terminated, no call, no show. Location of report: my office, after hours, blinds half closed. Date: early January, year withheld. Ray came in jumpy, swallowing the ends of words like he was late to his own mouth. He wore a vest 2 sizes too big with a name patch unpicked so clean the fabric remembered every letter. He asked if our interview would make him look crazy in writing, and I told him the truth. Writing just slows crazy down enough to read. He worked nights to pay for a class at the community college. He liked the quiet, the empty aisles. The job was simple. Take pallets, find shelf tags, face product. From midnight to 4, the store belonged to the handful of employees who preferred the company of boxes to people. He made friends with a guy at electronics who gave him extra breaks, and a woman at bakery who smuggled cinnamon knots after the bakes. Then aisle 17 moved. Not like a manager told the team to rearrange. That happens. Not like someone slid the gondolas over a bay. He knows that sound. Ray said he was zoning cereal when he looked up to check the end cap and saw that aisle 17, paper goods, had shifted right arc, while he blinked. The floor tiles remembered where it had been. The scuffs and skid marks were wrong. The aisle label up in the ceiling grid said a 17 on 2 different bays. He went to electronics to find his friend. The friend was there, same face, same wedding ring, same knot in the tie he wore like a joke. And when Ray said, "Did you see that?" the friend smiled without uncertainty, without curiosity, and said, "That happens sometimes." After that night, the store started thinking in new shapes. End caps doubled. Aisles stretched long enough to put a mirage in the middle. The clocks, drifted, and the break room one ticked backwards for 7 minutes and then wetly jumped to catch up. The intercom chimed in majors and replied in minors. Ray's headset crackled with price checks for items nobody had keyed in, codes that translated to nothing in the system. RLLBKEYES OVRSTKVEINSE. He began to dread the moment each night when he'd have to go to the bar receiving corridor alone. That hallway always feels a little wrong. Too long, too clean, too eager to accommodate whatever size pallet you're pushing. The concrete echoes. On his 3rd week, the corridor lengthened by at least 30 feet. The emergency exit at the end wore a new sign. Associates only. Thank you for shopping. He pushed through to find another corridor, with no doors, no utility closets, just drywall and floor paint that never scuffed. The air smelled like brand new plastic. You know the smell from Christmas morning when you open a toy. Excited, poisonous. He started seeing his co-workers in pairs. The bakery woman in 2 places at once. Her laugh over by Frozen, her back turned in bakery. He tried to call out and her name dizzied in his throat. When she finally turned, both versions of her turned the same measured degree and smiled the same smile at the same time. He followed an associate entrance only sign he'd never noticed to a stairwell that did not obey the store's footprint. It descended. The steps were shallow, as if designed for feet that weren't quite ours. The stairwell smelled like ozone and hair singed under a curling iron. At the bottom, there was a door stamped with a number so large it curled where the metal couldn't carry it. He didn't touch it. The door opened. The way automatic doors open when they sense mass. Beyond, a room with no shelves. A ceiling too high to believe, lit by panels that cast no shadow. On the far wall, where one would expect a loading bay, a glass rectangle as large as a billboard and as thin as cold air. It didn't show the parking lot. It didn't show the street. It showed a store like his, but wrong. Aisles intersecting at unparalleled angles, carts moving themselves, silhouettes where customers should be. Silhouettes too tall, with arms that hung too far. He stood there breathing so shallow he hurt his chest, and he listened. They were talking. Behind that glass, those silhouettes, not with mouths, with movement, with taps on the other side of the pane that formed patterns. He said it felt like being overheard. I asked if he was afraid, and he said that wasn't the word. He said the word was counted. On the way back up, he met his manager on the stairs. The manager's tie was straight. His hair was something you could set a watch by. "You're not scheduled on this level," the manager said in a tone that could have been a question if it had been allowed to be one. Ray mumbled that he was lost. The manager asked to see his badge. As Ray handed it over, the manager held it up not to the light but to his own eye, pressed the plastic close until it fogged, then returned it. "Thank you for being part of the team," he said, and moved past without disarranging the air. Ray quit that night. He didn't tell anyone. He walked out the front doors and into a different zip code. His car wasn't there. A fog of late-night insects haloed a lamp that belonged to a lot he did not recognize. He used his phone to pull a map and watch the little blue dot argue with his sense of direction. The store was, that's right, not there. He showed me the vest he'd borrowed. I logged it as found property because that was the only shelf I had for it. The patch still ghosted his name. When I sealed the evidence bag, the vest warmed under my fingers as if it remembered a back in it. It smelled like sugar glaze and mopped concrete, and, faint beneath that, like a resistor burning out. I asked him, off the record, what he thought the room was for. He cried a little then. I waited him out. On the tape I never filed, you can hear the fan in my office click to a higher setting, like it was listening for the name of a thing that didn't want one. Witness, Linda Morris, 34, bookkeeper. Status, husband and daughter, missing persons, open file. Location of report. Interview room A, lights lowered at her request. Date, mid-February, year withheld. Linda arrived with a sweater too big for her shoulders and a look that made officers in the hallway stand like schoolboys, because grief that clean makes people tidy their posture. She asked for the lights dimmed because the overheads made her feel examined. I switched them off. We talked in the glow from the hall. She set a small plastic pony on the table between us and spun it once with a fingertip as if winding it up could rewind anything. They went to the store for a toy. It was supposed to be a 10-minute errand before a movie at home. Husband. Mark had promised their daughter. Ellie, a unicorn that lit up. They laughed about it in the car and joked their way to the entrance. There were carts out front that weren't wet from the snow. There were no carts in the cart corral. Linda noticed because she notices everything. Bookkeepers do. The greeter said, "Welcome," in a voice that might have belonged to her grandmother if her grandmother had been taught how to use it the day before. They walked straight to toys. Somehow, the store made that a straight shot. I would later check plans. There is no straight shot in our local store. Ellie ran ahead, and Mark did that half-run parents do when they want to keep up without encouraging it. Linda put her hand out as they passed seasonal and felt static jump to her palm in tiny teeth. In the toy aisle, the unicorns were in a tidy wall, all the same smile, all the same eyes. The motion sensor display did not play the demo song when Ellie pressed the button. Ellie giggled anyway, her own soundtrack. Mark spun the box to find batteries and said, "These always need a screwdriver." Of course. Linda turned to grab one from the next aisle. Housewares had a peg of multi-tools that live near toy screwdrivers, and when she turned back, they were gone. Not gone down the aisle, not gone behind her. Gone like a blink miss. She did the math mothers do. She called both names with a cadence we all know. Name, laugh. Where did you hide? Turn, name, laugh. She walked the length of the aisle, one hand grazing the ends of boxes because it's easier to believe in plastic than in absence. She cut to the next aisle. She emerged 2 aisles away without having turned. Yes, I asked that twice. She maintained it, twice. She found an associate by electronics who spoke in complete sentences that had no place to rest. I'm sorry you feel that way, ma'am. We'll page him for you now. I'm sorry you feel that way, ma'am. We'll page her for you now. The cadence nested, folded, nested. The PA chimed and did not say a name. The store exhaled. You know that collective shift stores do at shift change, the way the soundscape resorts. Except there was no shift change, only an agreement she had not been invited to. She searched. When she remembers this part, she gets very specific. Which ends of which aisles ghosted her reflection and which did not. Which sections smelled like rubber, which like sugar, which like that dead air in the center of a refrigerator case when it cycles. She remembers a fire extinguisher in its glass cabinet that looked back at her with 2 fire extinguishers. She remembers touching her cheek to make sure her face was still in one piece. She found security doors. Near toys she hadn't noticed before. They wore a sign that suggested an alarm. She went through. No alarm. Behind them was a short corridor and a second door with a sign that did not have words. Just a color that made her think of old bruises. She pressed that bar too because love turns off signs. The corridor beyond was hack dark, not lit. Light. Your eyes water at that intensity, and tears are either pain or gratitude depending on who you are. For Linda, they were anger. She shouted her family's names into the glare, and the glare softened around the syllables like fat taking seasoning. At the end of the corridor, there was a room. It was the color of an eggshell from a species that doesn't lay eggs. It had no shelves, no registers, no doors. She could hear a beeping. A slow, heart-stupid beep like a scanner waiting for a barcode. She held up the toy unicorn as if that would earn her passage. She walked backward to keep her eyes on the room, because she felt if she broke line of sight it would collapse her. She stepped through the bruise-colored door and back into toys. The unicorn boxes were smiling at her again. The demo song played all at once in 4 different keys. She did the thing you do when your mind won't give you options. She checked out. She carried the toy to the register and waited in line behind no one. The cashier smiled and said the price before the scanner beeped. The receipt printed without numbers where the numbers should be. It read, "Thank you for allowing us." She kept the paper. She put the plastic pony from inside the box on my table later to show me the weight of her proof. We pulled footage. Of course we did. We watched her park. We watched her enter the store alone. We watched her walk with her hand extended behind her like someone small was holding it. We watched her buy a toy alone. We watched her leave alone. We ran every camera for the last 24 hours. There was no Mark. There was no Ellie. There were frames where sunlight flickered against the lens at angles that have nothing to do with buildings and everything to do with edges. We scrubbed audio and found a low frequency under the store's music. A standing tone at 17 hertz. The kind studies say makes people think they're being watched. I asked Linda what she believes happened, and I waited a long time while she let her hands rest flat on the table like someone practicing not to fly apart. She placed the little plastic unicorn in my palm. It was warm, though she'd been holding it all morning, and it vibrated a little. Battery demo mode turned on by a switch I couldn't find. On the receipt she kept, the store number read 000, and the city line read near you. I released her with a promise I knew I couldn't make honest, that we would keep looking. She left the light off behind her. I kept the pony on my desk until one night I dreamt a room without doors, and woke to find it face down on the floor. Put 3 stories on a board, and the human brain strings them together with yarn. That's what conspiracy is, our refusal to leave dots alone. I wanted to be cautious. I wanted to be a cop. The part of me that still irons a shirt for court wanted evidence, measurements, timestamps, visible edits, a suspect. The part of me that learned to hear when a witness believes herself wanted something else. A name. I started writing words at the top of the whiteboard in my office during lunches when rookies were out and the veterans were sleeping with their boots off. Appearance. Looping exit. Clocks. Unreadable receipts. Staff mouthing phrases. Service-only doors that aren't. Distance slips. Low frequencies. It wasn't random. It wasn't haunted in the old way. It obeyed a different logic. Imitation. It put on the mask of something we trust, the most ordinary building in America, and used its trust the way a hunter uses camouflage. I stopped calling it a store when I talked to myself. I wrote front on my pad when I meant its face, back where I meant its mouth, and under hika, back. I wrote something that made me sit in my car and watch my hands not shake. Observers. Not from the sky, not from a spacecraft with landing gear that ticked, from Hamats alongside. A parallel is not above you, it is with you, and you don't feel the seam until your feet skip over it. We tell ghost stories about the past because it's comfort. The dead were here first, so we owe them space. We tell alien stories about stars because it gives us distance. They came from far away, so the rules don't apply. We don't tell enough stories about neighbors, whose wall is so thin that sometimes you hear their TV through yours, and it's playing your show a second ahead. I started dreaming in fluorescent. I started avoiding big parking lots, not because I thought the store would be there, but because I thought it would be there for me. And then, of course, I saw it. I won't say where, because I want your town to feel safe for one more night. But there it was, at the Walmart, where the county keeps snowplows humming gently against the cold. The front doors breathed, the glass fogged in slow loops like sleep. Inside, I could make out the dull geometry of aisles and end caps and the white squares of sale signage without prices. A figure stood behind the vestibule at an angle a spine can't love. It didn't tap to be let out. It didn't wave. It waited like someone testing whether a cat will come closer if you look away. I sat in my car with the heater running and tried to give myself an order not to go in. Cops who walk into wrong buildings alone get memorial plaques with polite words. I am not a horror movie. I am a man who has to go home and put keys in a dish and remember to pay the electric. But I kept thinking of Walt's clocks, and Ray's room, and Linda's receipt. I kept thinking of how easy we are to study when we're shopping, how we move in predictable loops as long as the aisles don't move under us. They aren't from the sky. They don't need ships, they need patience and doors. They need a mask that we'll walk toward without being asked. And if a wall between worlds is thin, and if something on the other side is hungrier and meaner than we are, what would it wear to hunt? It would wear ordinary. It would wear every day. It would wear a store. I think the thing I keep seeing is not a place at all, but a frontsum, a membrane that slides into our world where the fabric sags. On one side, we see aisles. On the other, they see aisles that teach them how to arrange us. They reach hands that are too long and mouths that learn, welcome in. And they take a few at a time because a few vanishings are less interesting than a lot. We say, missing persons, because it hurts less than my taken hush. I didn't go in. I put the car in reverse and watched my own headlights whiten the snowbank like a clean sheet pulled up to a chin. The automatic doors slid open anyway, as if my backing away counted as arrival. Warm air touched the windshield and left a film that took an extra second to wipe. When I got home, there was a paper bag on my porch, the cheap kind with twisted handles. No footsteps in the snow. Inside, a receipt stamped Walmart number 000, with the city line, near you, the date, the time, closing, and an itemized list of 1 with no price. On the back in printer ink that bled like veins. Thank you for being our customer. I keep the 3 folders locked. I keep the bag. Some nights I take the plastic pony from my desk drawer and press my thumb against its belly. It doesn't play a song. It just vibrates on some frequency you can feel in your gums. I'm tired of saying, I don't know. I'm going to say what I believe, and you can write the letter that gets me benched later. These are not ghosts and not astronauts. They do not need to cross space because space is not what separates us. They are neighbors, with their lights off, listening to ours. They found a way to put on an outfit we love. They open when we walk close, and when we pass through, they take us as inventory, not as guests. If the store appears where you know it should not be, do not go in. If the doors slide open when you are still on the sidewalk, do not move. If you hear the intercom chime in a key that makes your shoulders rise without your say, do not listen for the words. If you pick up a receipt that doesn't count time correctly, burn it. Then compare the clock to the wall. And if you see a smiling greeter whose name tag flickers through names like a slot machine, do not tell yourself it's a trick of light. Turn around, leave the cart. Do not become someone else's tidy row. I have 3 case files that don't exist, and a parking lot full of snowplows where a store stood for an hour that the county can't account for. If this is a hunting blind, then we're deer admiring the craftsmanship. I'm going to bed now. I'm going to try not to dream of aisles that never end. But if you see a Walmart on a field where there shouldn't be one, and if you feel the air press warm against your face, and it feels like breath, please remember the one fact that has kept me in my chair when the doors slide open. We aren't the customers. We're the stock.